I'm Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Today, you all asked for me to cover the new video that was released of Courtney Clenney. For a little background on this case, so she is sometimes referred to as like the OnlyFans, capital M, because she had a very lucrative living on OnlyFans, and she had a boyfriend at the time. And today we're going to talk a little bit about their relationship based on some videos that we've seen. She is claiming self defense in this. And so far, all of the things that we've seen, all the videos that have been released, have been of her being aggressive towards him. She alleges that he was aggressive towards her, and there were also claims by her lawyer of some problematic alcohol use by her as well. And I definitely want to talk about those things in this video today. A little disclaimer for this video, there will be topics around intimate partner harm. There will be some difficult topics. I'm not going to play the entire video. I did watch the whole video that was released of the two of them. I am not going to play the entire thing, just a short clip from it. A new video was released allegedly by the boyfriend's family that shows an argument between Courtney Clenney and Obamseli, and I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. Clenney claims that she in self-defense, and a video was secured that really, to me, and we'll talk about it and we'll watch it, it showed her being verbally and physically aggressive towards him, in my opinion. And once again, these are just my thoughts and opinions. This is not a psychological evaluation. I do not know this case. She is also innocent until proven guilty, and she has every right to put forward a defense in her case. The fatal incident between Clenney and her boyfriend occurred back in April of 2023, and she's facing second degree capital M charges after she in the chest, which severed a subclavicle artery after an argument in their Miami condo. And she has over 2 million Instagram followers, and she had earnings of over $3 million from her OnlyFans account. Her boyfriend was a cryptocurrency trader, and she is claiming that she did this in self defense after a long history of being, and these are her allegations, traumatized by his controlling behaviors. So, with that being said, let's take a look at the video. There are also additional videos. I'm not going to go into that video of the day of the incident that happened back in April in the elevator where she's being aggressive towards him. His family is suing the apartment complex last time I checked because I believe there was security, and it sounds like people were aware of the issues within their relationship. This is also going to be recorded by someone who is just sitting there watching. And a lot of people have thoughts about, should that individual have done anything? Should he have said anything? And they just kind of sat back and filmed it. And to me, this generation, so I'm 41 years old, they're in their 20s. So that, like, people record arguments, they record fights. And so I think that's what was happening in this moment. It's just like, "Psh, like, this is, look at this. This is a mess," and they're just recording it for entertainment. The same way that some of my high school or middle school clients will talk about if there's a fight or something that occurs at school, that sometimes there are recordings of those things that happen. It's hard to be a bystander, to be sitting back watching a situation like this. It sounds like this was a typical interaction. This wasn't something that was rare or outside of the norm. It sounds like their relationship was pretty intense, chaotic. And we've talked about in relationships like this and why they can sometimes be difficult to leave is that there can be this big tension that builds and this explosion that happens. But then sometimes there's this recovery phase where both individuals feel incredibly loved, very attached, and the bond that they have is sometimes what we call a trauma bond. It's sometimes in the midst of this pain, in the midst of our brokenness and hurtness, and we're bringing our broken selves to this relationship, but neither one, and I don't know what was happening in their situation. I'm speaking in general, but if people aren't working on their individual needs and instead trying to seek healing, or like they're looking to the relationship to make them feel better or to fix them, or if they're not addressing those deeper issues. So if there are deeper issues of jealousy, if there are deeper issues of lack of trust or fears of rejection or abandonment, it's going to come up within the relationship and it can cause a lot of issues.
Wait, no, like I was sober for 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and now why am I not sober? Because of you. Like, you're hindering my progress.
You need to sit down. You need to sit
Let go of me. Let go of me.
Come on.
Let go of me.
Okay.
Come on, boy. Let go of me. I actually don't want to be with you. Actually, I'm done.
Okay.
Can you send him home?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm done.
Okay, fine.
Done. Because you're costing me money. I didn't do things I got from this fucking house because of you.
You let Milan say some line.
No, because you flirting with like 3 girls. Dude, get the out of here. This isn't even a house.
Yeah, cool.
It's not my house. But like, you're just like my boyfriend. Get the out of here. I can actually get like done if you're not here.
Yeah.
Get the out of here.
Okay, I'll remember that next
time. Get out of here. No, that's not gonna be the next time. Get the
Stop touching
get out.
Don't touch me again.
Good thing, get out. Get out. You never loved me.
So Clenney's attorney went on this show and talks about her client, and we definitely have to watch that part. So let's go.
This is a death case. Whether it was a murder or whether it was a killing that was a justifiable homicide in self-defense is what's going to be determined by the jury at Courtney Clenney's trial. So she's charged with second-degree murder. That is the position of the state of Florida. But her attorneys are fiercely defending her, saying that she was defending herself from Christian Albumcelli, at the time that she threw the knife at him that ultimately led to his death. I want to welcome in now one of the attorneys who is representing Courtney Clenney, Sabrina Puglisi, on the show with us live today to talk about this new video. Sabrina, good morning to you. It's always nice to have you on the show. Thank you for your time today.
Good morning, Julie.
If we could we start with that video? Because that's what, as you know, has everybody talking. And certainly you've looked at it, examined it. From your perspective, how will you and your colleague, Frank Prieto, you as a team, how will you use this, embrace it, or try to exclude it when it comes time for trial?
Yeah, and Julie, I just want to say thank you for the clarification you made earlier regarding, murder versus justifiable homicide. But this is another piece, right, of the evidence. It's a snapshot, and it's a snapshot of a toxic relationship, which we've always admitted to and we've seen. I mean, and let me be clear. I mean, in no way should people put hands on another person. It's not appropriate whether it comes from a male or a female. But having said that, there's also evidence in the case that shows that Albumcelli put his hands on Courtney, and not in the slapping and shoving kind that we see here in this video, in a much more aggressive, dangerous manner. And that will come out in the trial.
Oh, wow. And so, Sabrina, are you alluding to a piece of evidence that maybe we haven't seen yet?
It's evidence that exists in the discovery, and it's not been shown. We come on here to answer questions that the media has. And, I'll point out that the elevator video, which was released by the state attorney's office. This video right here was released by Albumcelli's family. So we come on here to feel like we have to defend the actions, but really the courtroom, and that's what I'd like the viewers to understand, is the courtroom is the real place where this trial will occur and all the evidence will come. We don't know anything about what leads up to this video. We know that she's drinking profusely. She said she'd been sober for 2 weeks. We know she says he treats her terribly, that she doesn't want to be in that relationship anymore, but it's a snapshot.
That was a lot. And I have a lot of thoughts. So I want to break down some signs of unhealthy and healthy relationship, talk about emotional reactivity, and then what it means to be enmeshed. So let's start. I will put links to these resources down in the description. So within an unhealthy or abusive relationship, there is possessiveness. There are overt or underhanded attempts to control how you may behave or interact with others, irresponsibility, making excuses or blaming you for their harmful actions. It is your responsibility to maintain their mood, manipulation, attempts at controlling your beliefs or choices, often involving dishonesty or distorting reality, intensity, express extreme or overwhelming feelings or actions. Pace of the relationship is going way too fast. We think of that as love bombing as well, where at the right at the beginning of the relationship, there's a lot, and the person pours in like there's a lot of love really fast. But then you start to see some red flags. And some people don't act on those red flags because the beginning was so good when actually the true part of the relationship is what's happening now, and that first part was the act, that was the manipulation to hook you so that you wouldn't leave. Disrespect, mistreatment, attempts at sabotage, makes you feel badly about yourself or your values. Instability, reactions are unpredictable, making you feel confused, afraid, or they withhold affection as a form of punishment. All right. So within a healthy relationship, we expect to see respect and trust, communication, equity, independence, kindness. We want it to be fun. Want it to go at a pace that's good for both people and that each person is responsible for their own actions, words, that they're responsible for themselves, for their own emotions. And this is on Teens for Courage. This is a resource for teens, and it goes on to have information about safety planning and if people are in an unsafe or unhealthy relationship. So let's talk a bit about emotional reactivity. And the reason why I bring this up is because sometimes you see this pattern of very intense emotions. And I recently had a video where we're talking about crying in therapy, and I followed up with another one that talks about emotional expression can be on a bit of a spectrum from emotionally reactive to being underactive. And there are tips on this article that I will share, just a few of them, and then I'll put a link if people want more information about it, about what are some signs of emotional reactivity and how can we become more emotionally balanced and be less reactive. Emotional reactivity is a common experience during intense stress or challenging situations that often leads to impulsive and disproportionate reactions. This phenomenon is typically triggered by our fight or flight reflex. And sometimes we call it amygdala hijack, where that survival brain always trumps thinking brain. So if my body, if my brain, if my emotions, if I'm feeling unsafe, sometimes there can be this reflex that comes up, and for me personally, I try to add a space between that stimulus and my response so that I don't react or overreact to a situation. So someone might say something and I'm like, and you get that first like, I think I might be offended. And my first thing I do is I ask them, hey, this is what I heard. Is that what you meant? Because I can misperceive things. So I wear glasses. I am nearsighted. I can see up close. I can't see far away. And so just putting on glasses changes the way I see things. And it happens all the time in relationships and within communication where I am filtering everything through my lens, through my past, through my emotions, through what I think, how I feel, how I see things. I'm filtering it that way and I can get it wrong. I might misperceive something. I might get something wrong. And so giving the person the benefit of the doubt to say, this is what I heard. Is that what you meant? And within safe relationships with safe people, they'll be able to clarify because, okay, if they did mean it to be disrespectful, or yes, they did mean it that way, then I can set a boundary, then I can decide what's next. But then I'm I'm balancing the emotion with thought. And it's not just a reaction, that's all emotion. And I'm not denying my emotions and just letting someone walk all over me either. So, emotional reactivity differs from a standard emotional response, and it's often more intense and usually an overreaction. And there are some common reasons for this that the article will get into later, with such as history of past trauma. There are certain diagnoses or disorders that can come with emotional reactivity, and people can learn how to manage these emotions better. There are skills, there are tools that really are effective for managing emotions. Emotional reactivity often happens impulsively before our brain has a chance to process the potential repercussions for our outburst. In the moment of our emotional reaction, our interpretations of the situation are not effective as they're being driven by the biological fight or flight response. So when I'm in that fight or flight response, I can sometimes see things wrong because the brain is just trying to survive. It's not trying to be accurate all the time. So when I'm in that fight or flight response, that response, it actually narrows your vision. Sometimes it makes it harder to hear and see. Like, it really does make it harder to think. And so I want to be vigilant versus being hyper vigilant. And when that response has been triggered a lot, and if I do have a history of going through a lot, sometimes it can make it a little bit more difficult to see things clearly. Some signs of emotional reactivity: having no control over what happens or what you say, saying hurtful things to people in moments of anger, crying uncontrollably, leaving a room in a loud, disruptive way, cursing or saying something offensive or inappropriate, having a physical response such as throwing an object, hitting the wall, being aggressive towards the person, screaming, or raising your voice at others. Some causes of emotional reactivity, like I said, past trauma, learned behaviors, physical stressors, so chronic pain or being like too hot or too cold. So I'm irritable when I'm too hot. Like I don't like being too hot. Cold, I can always put on a sweater. You can always put on more clothes. Hot, I do not like being too hot. Substance use, a mental illness, dementia, cognitive impairment, intellectual disability, and medical issues such as low blood sugar, experiencing a migraine, etc. So, how to be less emotionally reactive? The first step is self awareness and developing emotional intelligence. Emotional regulation is a part of emotional intelligence. And I actively practice mindfulness. So my brain is naturally wired to be a little anxious. And so the what ifs always pop up. And I have to breathe and focus on what is. What is in this moment? What is versus what if this and what if that? Now, sometimes the what ifs are helpful. And so that's where it's like, okay, is this a helpful what if or is this like tormenting? And within a certain practice, I believe it's a Buddhist practice, they talk about the difference between pain and suffering. So, pain, that's the dagger that comes. I don't have control over the pain that comes. The suffering, that's where what I do with the pain, how I perceive it, all of those things that matters. And I want to keep my control in that process where I allow myself to grieve. I give myself space to cry and I use skills, tools. And if it's too much for me to handle, that's where I'm going to reach out for help and support. Meditation and boundaries. So, boundaries are so important. And there's a great book that's called Where I End and You Begin, or Where You End and I Begin. I forget which way it is. I believe I have it linked in my Amazon storefront under recommended books, along with one of my favorite boundaries books by Nedra Tawwab, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Because within it, she really gives practical tips of how you can say no. And because sometimes a person that has poor boundaries might be emotionally reactive because they're not saying what's going on. I duetted a video over on TikTok, and I think it'll be helpful for this conversation. I will tag Kobe down in the description. She has a YouTube and she's also over on Instagram and TikTok. Kobe Campbell.
So I just want to remind everyone that part of developmental trauma is believing that people should anticipate your needs without you communicating them because there was a time where that was supposed to happen and it didn't. It's a hard pill to swallow, especially for people who've experienced abandonment and neglect, but you are responsible now for meeting your needs. Nobody is responsible for anticipating your every need and how you will respond to certain situations and then acting accordingly. There was a time, and that hurts to process. There was a time where people, your parents, your guardians were supposed to do it. They didn't do it. But now it's not an outside job. It's not an external job. It's your job and you can do it. You can get the resources. You can get the courage. You can get the bravery to say, I'm going to show up for myself and I'm not going to sit here waiting for someone else to do it for me.
So the reason why I share that is because often with our boundaries, we think people should just know, or they should just know how to treat us, or they should just know that this bothers us when sometimes I have to say it, like often. Like, so I'm a psychologist and something that bothers my husband, he has to tell me because I'm not gonna automatically assume. So if he's upset and I did something, my first response isn't what did I do? My first response is, oh, like he must have something. I don't know. Like my first response isn't I did something. Eh, Like, he has to communicate that to me, like, "Hey, I don't like it when this happens," and, "Oh, alright," and then we set that boundary, we move forward, but boundaries must be communicated because when they're not communicated, you're whoever has the stronger boundary, like, that's the one that we're gonna go with, and that might not be where your boundary is for yourself. And often setting boundaries can bring up that fight or flight response, especially for people who were not allowed to say no, people who had boundaries violated. It can be a really difficult thing to set boundaries. And so, with the clients I work with, we sometimes start with setting boundaries with strangers. Just like if you're at a restaurant and they get your order wrong, so just communicating those things, being able to confidently order for yourself and maybe make some adjustments if you don't like tomatoes or you don't like mushrooms, because there are people that will not do that. Like it brings up so much anxiety that just saying, "I don't want it this way," that can really be stressful for them. And so start small, start where you are, and if you need tips, general tips, because 'cause I'm not your therapist, let me know in the comments and I can do additional content. It might be a short, it might be a full video if we need to go deeper into any of those topics. Let's end with talking about enmeshment. Enmeshment is something that I learned in family therapy class back when I was in school, and it really applies to family dynamics and also to relationships. So, enmeshment is between two or more people where personal boundaries are not clear. It often happens on an emotional level, and within a family, it might be a mom can feel her son's emotions, or when her son gets angry, the mom gets upset for him as well. Now, if my son is getting bullied and I'm upset for my child, it's different if my reaction is more like it's happening to me. And if I'm not able to separate, this is my child's emotion so that I can be there to fully support my child. Because I've worked with clients that wouldn't tell their parents things because they wanted to protect their parents' emotion. The parent couldn't know how sad they really were. The parent couldn't know like what was really going on because they didn't want to upset their parent. And as a parent, I want to be a safe space where my child can let me know whatever's going on and whatever emotion that brings up in me, I can manage it, but I know that these are my child's emotions and I can support him, but I can't make them go away. It's not my job to take on his emotions. And sometimes we get that backwards. This can be really hard for parents in particular because they feel like they're supposed to protect their children when what they're actually doing is robbing them of the opportunity to become independent and take responsibility for their own actions, emotions, all of that. Enmeshment happens for a variety of reasons. Some signs of enmeshment is if you can't give each other personal time or space. You find yourself basing how you feel based on how the other person's feeling. So if they have a bad day, I have a bad day. If they have a good day, I have a good day. If you find yourself being overly involved in their life, where you're trying to save them, or that's where there can be some issues and some enmeshment. And that can happen within dysfunctional families. It can also happen within relationships. And so I will share that as well. I hope this was helpful. Anytime I talk about a case, I don't only want to cover the like sensational part. Like I want to make sure that I'm giving y'all tips and tools for things that can help in your individual life, or it can help us better understand what might be happening in a situation. In my opinion, from what we've seen so far, and Clenney's lawyer even admitted that the relationship does sound like it was pretty toxic. So I don't judge people for staying in unsafe or unhealthy relationships. My goal is to support them if they are going to make the decision to leave, or set boundaries within that relationship, or find ways to be safer. There are some situations that it's just like, ugh, if you can develop a support system outside of that person, if you can find a way to work on yourself. And that's what I do in therapy with clients sometimes. It's like, okay, we need to build your self confidence. We need to help your ability to manage your emotions. We need to help you feel like the survivor you really are. And that can sometimes give people the courage that they need to take a very, very difficult step. It is hard to leave someone that you feel you love. And what I often ask people is, are we loving them from our healed space, from that growing space? Or are we loving them from our trauma? Like, are we loving them from that broken place? Because sometimes we don't make the best decisions from that space. I hope that's helpful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.